Hello and welcome to We the Poets Season 2 with myself and Keely Mills.
Hello everybody.
Keely, how are things going with you?
Well, I'm on an interesting health journey at the moment and I'm having a little bit of a break from things because of that. But besides that, enjoying life and starting to write a bit more poetry again and excited about today. Really excited about our guest today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today. Now, I don't know if you're aware of Murray Lachlan Young. I'm sure a bunch of people listening to this are. Murray has been writing and performing for a long time now. He's someone that's inspired both Keely and myself like a lot
100%.
Over the years. There's so much theatricality and stagecraft within his work. He's got a great voice, I think, as well. You'll probably notice that when he's on the series with us. And he's just been through so much. For a starting point, he was the first and only poet to ever get £1 million record deal with EMI.
Yeah, he's a trailblazer, 100% trailblazer.
Just that in alone, it's incredible. We'll go over when we chat with Murray. We'll talk about some of the other things that he's done. But to get him here in the studio sharing his experiences, I think is really exciting. And if you are looking for an episode that covers what happens when you achieve those things that you really want and you really make it, and what that kind of does to your creativity, like about struggle when you're trying to achieve at that kind of like high level, and with that scrutiny around you as well, and also about how to maybe just stay creative and stay grounded.
Yeah, I think this is the episode, definitely. Yeah. This is why I'm so excited about this chat.
Yeah. So before we go any further, let's start with a great poem, yeah?
Yeah.
Can I just say, if you want to send work to us, please do. We love hearing poems and we'll put as many on the series as we can. Send them to mark@wethepoets.com. Right now, we have got more poems in our inbox than we've ever had.
That's so good.
I know.
That's what we want.
I know. I spent all of Sunday morning just listening to poem after poem and messaging people and having chats with them. We're going to try and do everything we can to get pieces in. But this piece really stood out. It's by Josh Cake, who is a poet from Melbourne in Australia, who now lives in Edinburgh. He's won a few prizes and things, and he was even named Poet of the Year in 2025 by Livewire Global Awards. This is a poem by Josh called I Am Tired of Being Pizza.
What fraction are you? What fraction black? What fraction white? What fraction belonging? What fraction foreign? What fraction of you is you? What frac is? What are you? The teacher said that I am mixed, so could I please list my fractions? Stand at the front, name every land in my blood. My fractions would be very helpful for the lesson, she was quite sure. So when I answered her, she wrote my ancestors inside cartoon pizza slices on the whiteboard. The teacher said that I was a great example of fractions, and I learned that I am a great example when I am broken apart. So I learnt my fractions off by heart, learned how to serve myself in halves, into quarters, into eighths, in whatever suits your taste. Everyone likes pizza, right? I know how to divide myself for others. For years, my stand-up opener was, I am descended from slaves and slave traders, so I make myself work hard. The crowd always laughed, so I continued to pit myself against myself, wrote essays on reconciling identities, shredded my tongue so badly I never tasted my lungs. My lungs are always together. My lungs hold all of me with every breath that only splinters at my tongue. My exhale is whole until I speak myself into fractions. One year, I meet a New York socialite whose friends are rich and woke white delighted that I am so diverse. They ask for my fractions and I am well rehearsed, and afterwards they are so hasty to display that they are not racist that they all start talking about how much they love Obama. They say they are jealous of my skin. One says it looks like semi-sweet chocolate, another says dark chocolate. They debate about me without me. 40%, 60%. No one can agree on my cacao fraction. And I swear I have a strong sense of self, but the next day at the shop I stare a long time at the map above the chocolate shelf. Maps are just neat lies. And I have learned you can go to the place they call border. Walk with 1 foot on each side, it does not hurt. I am tired of being pizza. I will be soup. No soup is half carrot, half potato. A carrot and potato soup is all carrot, all potato. I am taking the pizza knife off the table. Tonight, I hold myself with a ladle.
Thank you so much for that piece, Josh. That was Josh Cake. If you want to check out more of his work, I would highly recommend buying his album. It's at joshcake.com. I picked a copy myself, and it's fantastic. Really, really worth listening to. We are very excited, though, because we are here with Murray Lachlan Young.
Yay!
Hey, Murray. It's so good to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We've just had a bit of a drive from the train station, and we've had a really good conversation about tarot, which you guys both Keely and Murray, you both enjoy, like, tarot.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Steps away from me.
Pulls cape over nose, leaving only eyes.
Leaves me alone on a cliff.
We've driven over from the train station together, and we had like a really fun chat. There's so much we want to talk to you about, because Murray, you've been writing and performing for a long time, and you've produced a lot of things, like 5 books.
Yeah, maybe.
You've written screenplays.
Yeah.
You've been voted. You were named once. You performed on Glastonbury main stage. Yeah.
I didn't know that, Murray.
Yeah,
Did you know that, Murray?
Only poet to have done so in the modern era, which I reflected on in my tiny gig at Glastonbury this year in a small yurt. I thought, times have changed slightly.
Founder of the Crap Surf.
Crapsurfer.com.
I watched videos on when I heard about it a few years ago. I went to check it out. I think I do all right because I can't surf at all.
Right. Well, I think, it's a funny thing because it's, I suppose the idea, its strap line is for without failure, how can we truly understand success? And the idea is that it's for the person who gives the most effort with the least attainment, but you have to have the rudimentary skills to actually try and surf. But the great thing about crap surfing, which I would say that 75% of all surfers are pretty crap. And so what you find is it's the gift that keeps giving, because you can watch a crap surf competition and it's hilarious. It's just, we see people paddling and then finally standing up and believing they're surfing, but really their surfboard has actually reached the beach. Or being chased by a dog, which is running through the water. And the surfboard's just shooting up in the air out of the ground. And it's just really, really funny. I suppose the idea is it sort of takes that elite kind of feel out of it, of like, we are the chosen people, we are the surfers. Yeah. It's like, no, everyone's a surfer if they want to be. And as they say, the best surfer is the one having the most fun.
Yeah.
I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of that in your writing as well, though, to an extent.
Crap writing? I thought I'd managed to cover most of that up.
But I think a lot of your writing pricks the pin of the idea of poetry being removed or pompous or in an ivory tower, because you often write about things that are like genuinely funny and very human. I still remember your poem Goths on the Beach, which isn't about surfing, but it's just, was it always smoking, never swimming?
Dark alien children, why? Goths on the beach. Yeah.
I think you write about stuff that maybe is important to people, but they don't know is important to them until they hear it, and then they go, why is that?
You wrote an ode to your scrotum, right?
It wasn't my scrotum.
Actually,
it wasn't anybody. It was the scrotum, the archetype.
Right. Yeah, the metaphysical scrotum.
Yeah. The scrotum of all ages. Suspended in time. Yeah, exactly, because it doesn't get enough. I did a gig many years ago with John Cooper Clarke, and this guy came up to me after this, a very, very pale German youth came up to me and said, I was very interested in your poem about the scrotum. So there are at least 5 poems I'm aware of that directly address the sphincter, but none the scrotum.
Did you feel in that moment you'd made it?
No, well, I don't know really. I think I was just sort of suspended, you know. Yeah.
We should say as well, if you've not heard the poem, you also do it in a Scottish accent.
Yeah, it's an homage to Rabbie Burns. That's the idea. So it's written with a little vague sort of angle of Tia Haggis, which is obviously the great the Burns Night classic, which addresses a haggis, and a haggis obviously has certain similarities in form to a scrotum.
So this is
if you want to push it that far.
But so I guess that's fun. Like, how often do you see a poet put on an accent when they're going to read a poem? It doesn't happen that much. How important is it being fun when you write poems?
Well, I mean, I do write sort of introspective pieces, you know, don't rhyme and stuff, and I really like doing those as well. And I must admit, I do struggle to integrate them into a set, and I think maybe that, you know, I could do with a bit more courage to do that. But the thing is to tickle people, you know. I think the thing that I love most about that type of writing is from childhood. What is worst in your sort of teens and 20s, I found anyway, where you look at the world of adults and society and the systems and stuff and the deeply confusing nature of everything that's around us, and you start looking and look a bit closer, and it's just like, this is all just a load of bullshit. It really is. And then you see everyone else walking around, you know, caught up and taking it so seriously. And then the idea of providing the sort of a place where people can come and listen, and you're just pointing out the stuff that doesn't work and it's really funny, which then has a deeper pointing to the fact that everyone's just doing the best they can, A, but B, a load of it's absolute nonsense. And to try, and once that veil of nonsense is off, then people can relax and laugh at it all. For me, to be able to make those discoveries and then find an audience, you know, who can share in it is a gift.
One of the first poem I ever saw you perform was the thong poem. Is it wrong to wear a thong?
Yes, exactly.
Where
one of the more deeply introspective pieces. Is it wrong
to wear a thong?
To wear the thong? Is it wrong to wear the thong? What is it? Is it wrong to wear the thong with hair? Bouffant. Is it wrong? Is it wrong to wear the thong with hair? Bouffant and play ping pong? Is it wrong? Is it wrong to bang the gong for those who wish to wear the thong and play ping pong with hair bouffant? Or would it cause a contretemps for those who wear the silk sarong and sit upon the high chaise longue, drinking l'absinthe Souchon strong, and judge the throng and wear the thong? But they simply do not wish to see the schlong, ding dong, within the thong, and thus decide to tongue the thong headlong upon the moral prong, and thus bring on the long swan song and the last denouement of the thong, which is wrong, which is wrong, which is very, very wrong. So come along and bang the gong and sabotage the denouement and sing the song for those who wish to wear the thong with hair bouffant and play ping pong. It is not wrong. It is not wrong. It is not wrong. Is it? Thank you.
But it's so funny because you're playing a game with the audience all the way through where they're trying to work out how you're going to keep hitting the rhyme of thong as it moves through.
Yeah.
I love these kind of poems in the poet's set where it's almost like you're saying to everyone, this is what I'm juggling with. And I think those poems do such a good job to like lift the set.
Yeah, I think that the thong I've found historically has been a great icebreaker because the problem, because what you get as a performer is you walk into a room and that there is a job to do, and the job there is to say, I'm leading. You know, you're following, it's going to be fun, your money was well spent. Most people have just taken a chance on you walking into a room, you know. Lots of people have been dragged there by a partner.
Yes, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of scenarios going on, and you've got to try and homogenize that room into being a one. And that requires if it's a short set, you know, you've got to do that pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
And to do a poem like The Thong, it's so completely preposterously ridiculous that to sit through that thinking, well, I didn't want to come here, don't like poetry, you know, and I'd much prefer to be down the pub with my mates, but I came because she dragged me here and blah, blah, blah. Oh, The Thong. Oh, really? And how can you possibly remain serious at the end of that? So it kind of knocks a hole into people's psyche.
You had a show for kids. Was it called The Dead?
Oh, it was, yes. It was the 9 Dead Williams.
The 9 Dead Williams.
Yeah.
I came and saw that, and when you performed it, you came out in pyjamas before the show. And there were like 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds there. It really was getting very, lots of young kids. Families, you could tell the parents really just wanted to get through it without their child causing a problem for everyone else. You know? But you came out in pyjamas and you just said, oh, I've not started the show yet. I'm the performer, just to let you know I'm not starting the show yet. And then you kind of went back and got sorted and then came out and did the show. It's the same thing of getting the audience comfortable and getting those kids so that they're kind of unified and getting to know you and everything else. And I think you must, I'm guessing, you think about your whole performance of the arcs of your shows and your sets, like holding the audience's hand and guiding them all the way through. Is that the case when you start writing a set or you come up with something? Do you think, I'm going to get it framed at the beginning like this? Like, why did you make the decision for the pyjamas and everything?
Well, I mean, it was a dressing gown, actually.
Oh, sorry, dressing gown.
But that was the idea I was commissioned by Arabella Churchill, who was one of the founders of the Glastonbury Festival. She had the Glastonbury Children's Festival. She said, come and try some stuff out. And I started doing poetry in this very shirt that I'm wearing now. And I sat under a tree doing poetry. And there was all this stuff going on. And these kids were just looking at me. And one of them turned to their mother and said, Mummy, he's boring. And I was like, oh no, it was a dagger to my heart, you know, and they all just walked off. All the kids just walked, because kids are completely honest, of course. And I was sitting there feeling really depressed, and my son came up to me and said, have you seen Tony Macaroni? And I was like, no. And he took me to see this little guy who didn't use words in his set at all. And what I noticed with him is that he was down on the level, looking the kids straight in the eye, no babying, no talking down to, completely in their world. And they were transfixed by this guy. And I thought, I can do that. Do not speak to children like they're babies. Talk to them like they're human beings, because they are. And they know more shit than we do, you know. Because a lot of them are haven't had it kicked out of them yet. So they're really bright, and they have incredibly insightful young beings. And so then the idea is like, well, okay, so they're an audience. How do you then show them they're an audience? And you look at street performers doing it with adults, and they, you know, somebody walks across in front of where they are, and they say, what are you walking across my stage for? And at that moment, the street performer has created the stage by talking it into existence. And so with children, they haven't been an audience before, many of them. So what I thought was, well, you just come out and you say, under the guise that you haven't started the show, you then say to them, look, I haven't started the show, but I wanted to find out just a bit about you, get to know you, and then tell you what the show's going to be. And then you say, does anyone like dancing? And they were like, yeah. And you say, right, it's going to end in a conga. Do a demonstration of a conga, but with only 2 people. And they're like, wow, we can all get into that. Well, that's going to happen at the end. So they're like, they know it's got a good ending. So that's what you call your contract moment. So you make your contract with an audience. And so then you say, does anyone like farting? And they're like, what? Farting? and then because there's going to be loads of farting and dancing. Wow, we can buy into this. And does anyone here like pretending to be dead.
Yeah, that's
because there's going to be kids dying on stage. What? Kids dying on stage? You've sold them this show, and they say, now, are you ready for me to start the show? And they're like, yeah. And you say, okay, let's practice, because I'm going to come on stage, and there's going to be music, and I'll be doing high fives, and then I'm going to punch my fist in the air, and everyone's going to go crazy. Can you do that? Let's practice going crazy. So at the same time, you're then training them to be an audience, and then bang, they know who they are, and you've given them enough parameters to feel that they can express themselves, and then you smash that up by getting them on stage. So in the 9 Dead Williams, 9 kids dying on stage one after another, a taboo being sort of like kicked around the room in a very easy manner. And then suddenly a baby will run onto stage, all these kids lying dead on the floor, and the mother's like, oh God, the baby's got away. And you're like, no, let the baby come. And the baby walks on stage, and you just stop everything. And then you look at the baby and say, that's a really great look you're working there. I love the shoes, I like the trousers, the whole thing, very relaxed. And then flip it to, and there, in the charnel ground, amid the dead bodies, the tot wandered, oblivious to the horror before it. And the mother's sitting there going, I don't know what's going on, but it's free babysitting. Anyway, there you go.
I'm just sitting here listening to what you know, and also like meeting you again. There's this real sense of play with everything that you do. Have you always had that kind of sense of play?
Yeah.
You know, even Crap Surfer, there's a sense of play, and something that as adults we don't allow ourselves to do, or we think we shouldn't do, this idea of play.
I mean, to be able to just drop into that clown character where you can just like, there is no limits, there's nothing is wrong, everything is okay. And in answer to your question, I feel it's just coming back, you know, properly.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I've always had it and I've been able to turn it on, but to actually integrate it into being part of one's everyday life and actually just looking at things and going, do you know what? This is all completely ridiculous. I mean, look around at it all. These odd-looking beings with fingers, walking around doing stuff, taking it all so seriously. And I was reading this thing from William Blake the other day, and he was talking, and he talks, there's a great book called Awake, which just come out by Mark Vernon, who's a philosopher and psychotherapist and a real studier of Blake. And he was saying that to greet the world with innocence, you know, but not ignorance, is the key. And he also said, I think I mentioned beforehand, it is wise to love God more than you hate the devil. And taking that as a metaphorical thing, whether you believe in God or not, you know, it's like, don't go down that road of going into negativity. There's so much of it around at the moment. And what can we do? What we can do, I think, you know, and more people I speak to saying the same thing as well, is that what we can do is be in the space that we're in with the people we're in and try and make that space a positive space. Yeah. And a fun space, and to gently kind of dismantle ideas through being playful, because that sets off a ripple, you know.
There's 2 prongs here. I feel like by being playful, you give permission for other people to be playful as well, even when they don't know. And also there's something about being playful, and then I think it's very close to being charming. This like idea of being charming. I see it quite a lot with my dad. Everyone goes, "Your dad's really charming," and I think, no, he's just really playful. He just likes to have fun. I think it is a type of charm.
Yeah, I suppose if you wanted to sort of technicalise it a bit, then you could say it was the employment of dramatic irony as much as possible in every conversation, which is basically what people, you know, and dramatic irony is always about, you know, one person knows something, we the audience know something that they don't know, but they know it really, but they're doing it anyway and they're pretending it isn't happening, and, you know, all of that sort of stuff going on. And it's interesting when you try and use dramatic irony or play with people who are not first language English speakers, they really appreciate it as well. So I go to Italy and I speak to some friends there, and they put a bit of irony in when you say something, and then there's just a second's pause, and they realise that you didn't mean what you were saying whatsoever, and you were referring to something else. And suddenly there's a common currency in the room, and as you say, that's you know, the permission
Yeah, the permission
that
it's all right. Don't worry, just take off. You said earlier the 17 sunglasses of ego. It's like, take those sunglasses off. It's okay, just take off the costume. It's fine. You don't need to worry. Just relax. Just have fun. I think that's what a lot of time performers or people that are really good at play, that's what they enable other people, and that's why people are quite attracted to that, because they want that permission to be able to just be like, I can just relax for a minute and not have to worry about these things or feel like I've got to talk about these things because that's what's expected of me.
The big mistake, I think, in a lot of discourse, entertainment, whatever, is pointing and telling people what stuff is.
Yeah.
But if you suggest what it isn't, then you empower your audience, I think.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Is there any poems that you've just really enjoyed performing? That once you've written them, you just had like, you've had the most mileage out of just fun with it on stage?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I've got one which is a story of a dog that drove a tractor, which is deeply ironic, and then I've got another one, a new one, which I entered for the first time a poetry competition. Can you imagine?
Okay, yeah.
It was an ego exercise. It was just like, how's the ego doing? I will enter a competition, a poetry competition. So I entered an esoteric poetry competition and came second. It's called Everything's Under Control. Everything's under control. Everything's under control. So nothing at all can go possibly wrong because everything's under control. I've sorted the things from the things by pulling 10 million strings. I've labelled and tabled as well as I'm able, and now it's all sorted and totally stable and everything's under control. Yeah, everything's under control. As long as we stick to the book and nothing at all is mistook. The sheep from the goats and the letters from notes and the ropes from the snakes and the ships from the boats, as long as we all play the game by calling each thing by its name, then everything's under control. Yeah, everything's under control until somebody somewhere infringes the rules by mistaking a lake for a pond or a pool or a shih tzu for a bichon frisé, thus bringing the thing to its knees, and plunging us into a world where everything just gently unfurls and night slowly turns into day in a deeply mysterious way, and raindrops just fall from the sky and all things eventually die and nothing is under control. No, nothing is under control. So nothing at all can go possibly wrong because nothing is under control.
That's ace.
Oh.
I think the thing that I've been becoming more and more aware of in recent years is that if you want a situation, particularly those that have already happened, to be different than they are, then you're wasting your time. And it's all just happening, and it's not going to stop happening, And I suppose that,
yeah,
King Midas, that idea of the turning, commanding the tide to stop coming in, and just trying to take that down to a sort of micro level of what am I putting myself in opposition to that I cannot oppose.
Yeah, yeah.
And just becoming a bit clearer about that. That's really helped in recent years for me.
But also, I guess you've created a lot. So you've written a lot of books. You've been BBC Six Music. You were poet in residence there for 13 years.
Yeah.
So creating poetry constantly through that as well, gigging and touring. So I suppose what I'm saying is, if it's the idea of like, what can you really control? You can't control much, but you've managed to control a lot because you managed to have a huge impact with what you've written and what you've created. Well,
I think the difference is that there's the perception of control.
Yeah.
Versus the idea of flowing with what's happening and trying to make that the best version of itself that it can be with what you can do in the sense of, people say, looking at it for sort of sailing a ship rather than driving with your hands really tight on the wheel of a very small car, so you can make adjustments in the way that you're looking at things to try and accommodate what's happening, I think.
Yeah.
But the moment that you actually try to control things, it's usually like you get the message back saying, this is above your pay grade, now stop it.
Yeah.
And that slap in the face comes in any form it wants to.
Do you think that's why you've had so many wonderful opportunities like come your way? Because you've just been open to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think it started off definitely like that, but there was an intention behind it. And I think that's kind of important, is to have an intention. You can just let life just happen. But if you say, oh, well, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
And you really want to, then, there's no reason why it shouldn't happen. But then I think there's a lot of self-defeating stories that people hold on to, which say, well, I couldn't possibly do that because I can't do blah, blah, blah. And they've got a long list they carry around with them. And I think I went from being like wildly open with an amazingly sort of clear intention through to getting so deeply stung by circumstances that then I tried to make myself small and kept my head down, and then built a whole little list of things of why I couldn't do stuff. And that process, despite the fact that just through my own personal tenacity and desire to carry on, and maybe the desire for it to continue, I carried on going, even though I felt very wounded by a lot of things. And it feels like only after probably, a really long time of engaging and indulging in a lot of self-defeating stories, I've finally sort of finished lifting my head. I've been lifting my head for quite a few years, and it's taken a long time because I had a lot of stories. A lot of nonsense.
Can I ask you, what was one of those moments that might have kind of clipped your wings a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it's difficult to say it without telling a long story. Yeah. So I don't know.
I think we've got time for a long story. I think, Murray, I'm guessing what we're kind of talking about is maybe, you mentioned you had the intention when you started. What did you want to achieve when you started writing poetry?
I wanted to show them.
Who's them?
All those people. No, I think if I look, my little sort of pet story about it is that I was brought up in a family with a sort of hyper intelligent brother who was sort of genius level, with logic and could do anything. And a father who thought he was fabulous, and I was kind of black sheep of the family. And I think I spent a huge amount of my childhood jumping up and down, desperate to be heard, and not being listened to as far as I could see. A massive load of younger brother syndrome stuff going on, where I didn't feel that nobody could see my godlike genius. They just couldn't see it. And I became infuriated by it. But suffering from really kind of quite bad dyslexia, I'd be writing stuff on pages and thinking, look at this amazing piece of work I've done, and it would come back with an E or an F on it. But why? Why can't, and it was, I just couldn't write. I didn't know how to spell, I couldn't construct anything.
Did you write your poems out, or did you learn them in your head?
Well, I mean, there's an interesting thing there. So when I started Saturday Live, I realised, and I was in my 30s then, and so what I would do is, so for those people who don't suffer from dyslexia spectrum, is what happens is you're reading, or in my case, what's happening is you're reading something out loud, and then the eye will jump two words forward for some reason or other, or something like that. And then you'll realise you've jumped 2 words forward, and then you jump back, and in that then comes a hesitation where you forget where you are, and then the confidence goes, you go up into your head, and suddenly it's awful. And that happens to people with dyslexia who are forced to read out loud again and again and again. So you develop strategies. I've developed strategies of being silly, getting kicked out of a lesson, anything I could do to prevent myself from reading out loud. So when I got to Saturday Live and I'd be writing these poems, I would then have to learn them pretty much all the way through. So when I held the paper in front of me, I wasn't really looking at it, I mean, I was casting my eye over the words. Anyway, so then one day, the host, who was Fee Glover then, just handed me an email and said, would you read this out, please, Murray? And the world stopped. And it was like, oh no, there's however many million people listening, and I'm going to be exposed to somebody who can't read out loud, and I'm 30 years old. It's so embarrassing. You know, the horror and all of that embarrassment from childhood about not being able to read out loud just came triggering its way into me. And I was sitting there, and, you know, those classic film scenes where everything goes into slow motion. And I sort of like was, you know, there in the room, and this voice from somewhere just said, "Follow the punctuation." And so I lifted this email up and started reading, and got to a comma and put a little pause in, and then got to a full stop, and I stopped. And then I was at the end of it, and she said, "Thank you very much," and blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, I'd been to hell and back and wherever in the course of those probably 3 minutes. It felt like about 5 hours. So that is the answer to that question.
So I guess you started creating poetry, and you were having like a lot of success, because you were the first and I think only poet to ever get like a £1 million record deal.
Yeah. Well, it happened in the most bizarre way. So I was at University of Salford in Manchester, and for my dissertation I wrote a paper on stardom and saying how it works, what it means, etc., etc., etc. And then I went to the Edinburgh Festival playing in a play, The Exorcist, Father Barry, and which meant me sort of screaming like 24 hours a day, doing street theatre, being followed around by a bunch of nuns, standing on stage doing exorcisms, screaming the Latin prayer of exorcism on a ley line in a church every day for 3 weeks. And it felt like I'd emptied myself out of every tiny portion of negativity that I could possibly exist in my body by this constant screaming, walking around, long hair, flares, massive golden cross on my back with mirrors on it, which I could reflect the sun in, and blind people in the street, and then stand there and say, "Do you hear me, Asmodeus?" and just freaking people out. I got attacked a few times by various different people, and for some reason or other, I laid my hand on someone's head, and they just went, "Oh my God!" And then these people, and they burst into tears. I had this woman, you know, these people deciding I was a priest, and I got this sort of thing where I could lay hands on people.
Is this at the Edinburgh Fringe?
Yeah.
So these are Edinburgh Fringe Festival?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like Scottish people. Yeah. And I could only put it down to the fact in retrospect that I had emptied myself of all negativity. So I could just take in whatever anybody's negativity was, and it would leave them. And then I would scream it out on stage that night. So it became this sort of really strange feedback loop. And then at the end of that finished, and I went to London, and I started doing this kind of performance art game show with a friend. I just started doing my poetry then, which I'd done as a piece of coursework at Salford. And I was then telling that to people, like, you know, face to face, just at parties, you know, be like, you know, "Hi, I'm a performance and writing student, and I'm a show off, and I want to like impress you with something. So here's my poem." And everyone was really into them, because what I was doing is I developed this incredible presence through this exorcist thing that I could just slow down time. And you just got a tiny hint of it at the end of the Everything's Under Control poem. But I could walk into rooms and just completely calm an entire room full of people chatting just by standing there and doing these kind of crazy poems. And then somebody said to me, "You really got to get up on stage and do this." So I went to Ronnie Scott's, and they had a sort of open mic night. I did that, and it went off like a bomb. And then all these people saying, "You must come and do this, you must come and do that," etc. Because lots of people from other clubs were there looking for, you know, acts for their club. And then the guy said, "Listen, you need to do your own night at Ronnie Scott's." And then there was a record company there, and then I got signed with a record deal. And then I was selling out Ronnie Scott's, and then EMI stepped in. But what I was doing was following a lot of the stuff that I'd written about the dissertation of stardom. So I was projecting myself into a place where I should really get a PhD for it, but but I was doing the field work of the how to become famous thing that I'd written at college.
Okay.
And it was working. Then EMI came in, picked it up, and then it really started going crazy. And then it was like, right, you've got to deal with MTV USA. I was out there doing that. Then you've got a book deal with Trans World. And now you've got the big deal with EMI. And the whole thing was building, selling out shows. It was all coming. And
So you signed a contract. Was that weird, that moment? Was it actually like a contract you signed with the
Yeah, there was a big sort of signing ceremony, and there was, like limos, and, I bought a pair of Gucci clogs to wear. And I signed it with a Mont Blanc pen. You
were picked up in a limo and taken to sign. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't take I'm not a person, and the big battle flag of the poem which was in London and New York, it was going off, which was simply everyone's taking.
Yeah, Morcheeva made it into a track as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So, and I said, all right, if I'm going to sign this record deal, I want to be wearing Gucci clogs, holding a Mont Blanc pen, high on. So I went off to the loo and did a huge and came back, and I've seen the photographs of the signing sessions, me looking very peculiar, but I mean, I just wanted.
We can't use any of that.
I just.
But I loved hearing that.
So, how did your family respond to that?
Well, I mean, so just to complete the cycle of it. So the deal was struck, and then someone says, "Oh, by the way, I got Oasis's pluggers as well." So they were like, huge pluggers at the time, and obviously Oasis were everywhere, so they had a lot of leverage in the market and on the media, and they said, "Oh, we've got you a gig on the main stage at Glastonbury." But this, first they said, "We got you a gig on the main stage at Tea in the Park." And I went to Tea in the Park and had the most unbelievably terrible experience of leaving the stage with 20,000 people chanting "wanker." Can you imagine that? Oh. But then having to come back on and do it all again. And again and again and again. And I won. It was an amazing experience, actually turning that crowd round, turning 30,000 people round.
Why did you have to go back on?
Because we had a contract that I had to go on before all the main acts. So I went on before the equivalent of the Happy Mondays.
Like a compare item, like doing a piece.
Well, a poem and before each main act. Yeah. And I went on before Black Grape, who were the Happy Mondays. And I looked at them, and if you've seen Lord of the Rings, the Uruk-hai, the war orcs. And I looked down and I saw these people, and I was like, oh my God, disfigured from drug taking. And I looked at them and I was like horrified by the look of these men. And then the thought came into my mind, if you fell off this stage, they'd kill you. They'd dismember you. And then they saw me have the thought, and they all went, ah! I was like, ah! And then they saw me do that, and then they did it again, and then they started chanting "wanker," and then I went off stage and completely broken. Ran into a bunch of Glaswegian roadies who explained to me the power dynamics of Glasgow, which is a people's city, and I had come in with the wrong attitude, and they told me the right attitude, and they told me a whole bunch of stuff. Went out on stage and won, and came off, and the Prodigy's manager was standing there, and he said, "Would you introduce the band tonight?" So cut to later on, me standing there, the Prodigy, and then being run over by that giant sort of inflatable hamster ball with Keith in it, and just going, "This is it!" And then I got up the next day and put on a 1970s silver jumpsuit that I bought in a charity shop, went out on stage again and did a poem before Kylie Minogue came on about identity theft called "I Am Kylie Minogue," but I didn't realise that the entire audience had changed, and I had the whole thing happen again, like, "Get off, you bastard!" Very funny. So obviously the idea of playing Glastonbury main stage to me was no big deal. So I went out and did that, and it was a very muddy year, and there was quite a few people there. I think I was second on. I think it was 97 maybe, and came off stage, and everyone's holding up the front page of the Daily Telegraph, and I look and I'm like, and there is a vibe in this room, and like something has happened, and I'm not sure what it is, and they're all holding up this newspaper. I get down, and my girlfriend's standing there, And she says, look. And I look at it, and there's a picture of me on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, and next to it there is a thing saying, young poet signs £1 million record deal. And then the text of simply everyone's taking cocaine, published on the front page of the Telegraph. And there, I sort of, in the Mr. Ben sort of thing, I put on the clothes of this poet and walked through a door into a completely different world where, and what I understood or have understood subsequently is that I was so wide open, and playing The Exorcist, I'd had this heart opening, which I was just consumed with love for the world and everyone in it, but I had no boundaries, none at all. And the music industry is full of some very, very kind of dark characters and, energy vampires and lots of it. What happened was this was picked up by Reuters. It went round the world. I became, in the English-speaking world, I was on the front page of everything. It became a massive media story, and I became a massive media story. Yeah. Didn't become a famous star. I became a massive media story.
Yeah.
And that is what I intrinsically understood, but I couldn't really kind of put my finger on it. And then, of course, a media story, which comes out in silly season, which is pretty much what it was, nearly silly season, it requires legs. And it can only go, isn't it amazing that guy signed that £1 million record deal through to, he didn't sign £1 million record deal, through to, he's shit.
Yeah.
His work is shit.
Yeah.
And then what I didn't realise is that my publicist, or the publicist who was publicising my story, had employed people to attack me publicly. And he hadn't told me.
Whoa.
And so I was getting this violence from all over the press. I got A.A. Gill was a deeply unpleasant person anyway, but he went for me. Various other people went for me. Poets who we know their names piled in as well, and they know who they are. Because the thing is, when you see someone as a media story, and we're all guilty of it, so I don't hold any grudges towards anyone, they're dehumanized.
Yeah.
So you can start to discuss them like they're an animal. Yeah. And that was what happened to me. And the thing is, I'd been in the music industry surrounded by management and handlers. And what they do within that world is they boost your ego to control you. It's just a trick that they play in you. It's like nobody talks about it. It's just what they do.
Yeah.
You're a genius. You're amazing. Yeah. You're wonderful. You're fabulous. You're incredible all the time.
Yeah.
And then you sort of become reliant on that validation. If you're not a really well put together person, but tell me who's 26 years old and suddenly experiencing a rush of fame is going to be well put together. A lot of people, have got good support systems. I didn't at all.
Okay.
And so went through all of that. And then I reached this point where I suddenly thought to myself, I'm holding onto a rising balloon here. And I had all these clothes, I had this mad tailor making me all these clothes. I looked like this kind of really out there character, beautifully cut, kind of Edwardian Savile Row suits, and this kind of growing hatred of me in the media. Because the thing that happened was that the music industry presented the literary industry with a literary figure, and that breaks the status quo because you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
If they're a pop act, it's fine. But if you're saying they're a serious poet, well, then you've got just about every journalist who consider themselves to be a novelist who hasn't published a novel, many have, suddenly they're like, hold on a second, that's not your job. You're a bunch of barra boys in the music industry. We're the real people. We went to university. We've I only get paid this much money. Yeah. And that £1 million poet is going down. Yeah. And so that was beginning to happen. And I suddenly realized one day that I was slipping into not being able to withdraw from the character that I was projecting. And I realized that I was going to go mad if I carried on, or I was going to lose myself completely and become this sort of figure that I created. Were you feeling disconnected from your family
at this point? Because you said at the beginning you started off kind of wanting to... you wanted to hold your own in a way, like within the family, and have them kind of value what you did. You were seen as a black sheep. How were they responding to this as well?
Well, nobody understands. That's the thing. Nobody understands. they can't understand.
Yeah.
It's like, you talk to, an astronaut or something.
Yeah.
You come back, so what's it like? Or just a deep sea fisherman even.
Yeah.
You say, what's it like? You talk to someone who's been at war. What's it like?
Yeah.
You can't explain it. And then it was, the press narrative was his writing's shit. He's a fake. He's an imposter and his writing's shit. And then and I remember my family saying, well, they're right about your writing. It's more for the voice than it is the page. And
which people are more accepting of now in a way. Like, people consider that to be quite valid now, whereas I would say even 10 years ago, people really thought differently about writing for performance.
Well, it's a construct. That's the thing, because if you did original poetry, like kings were illiterate. They had people to write for them. Their job was to govern. It wasn't to read and write. It was to, in many cases. And the news was transferred by troubadours and poets. Blind Harry being a classic one in Scotland. And that was the function of these people. You'd have the people who held within their mind the Iliad. It was a spoken art form, and Shakespeare is a classic, is another area of it as well. Of course, Shakespeare jumps, or spans, the written and the performance. But somehow or other, in the same way as Greek theatre became modern theatre and alienated the working classes, they won't go. They'll go to panto, they'll go to musical theatre because it's Greek, they'll go to panto because it's Greek, but they won't go to a bunch of intellectual stuff which only people who've been to university are going to go to, because it's not for them. And so you have this area within academic poetry where it excludes huge numbers of people and then dwells in that place. And I'm not saying it's not valid at all, but it becomes a smug little scene. And I think what we're trying to do within poetry, which has performance attached to it as well, which doesn't invalidate the writing, is try to open it back out to an audience, to be Greek about it again, to take it Greek and say everybody. So what we want is somebody, which is my favourite thing if ever I do a gig, is somebody walking up to me at the end and say, I really hate poetry, but I love that. And that's what we want, because you're trying to include people. We're back into everything's under control poem. It's based on their own self-identification. So the idea is, you construct a character for yourself in the world and you believe it's you, and those are the chains of your bondage. So you say, well, I'm a serious academic poet, I'm blah, 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 I'm very well learned in this, I'm no, etc., etc. And that doesn't include that person, this person, that situation, this situation. So therefore, if I slowly, gradually hem myself in further and further and further, then I put my hands over my eyes, then I put my hands over my ears, and then I don't go out at all, then everything will be under control.
What was the toughest thing for you during that time, though?
The feeling of complete isolation. Nobody understood what was going on. But the problem is that I had done exactly just what I was talking about with people who are snobby about the wider area of poetry in a different way. The thing that I was projecting was The Exorcist that I played in Edinburgh. And that's why it had such a confrontational energy to it. It wasn't me. And so I was using that as a vehicle for myself, which is what, all stars do. I'm not saying I was a star, but, from in that scenario, I was a notorious public figure. And so that kind of energy of this kind of slightly dark, slightly demonic exorcist is what people took for being me, but it was really my vehicle. And they fucking hated it. They hated me. And so I had hate sites on the internet, people spitting at me in the street. I had really scary stalkers. I had a constant attacks in the news, which was being fomented by this PR guy. And the problem was I had started to develop this ego, which was being definitely plumped up by the people around me within the recording industry. So as people with egos do, their ego starts to swell, and they are holding a pin in their hand, and anybody they meet, they're saying, here's the pin, but don't stick it in me because I'll pop. And that's like, and so I was ripe for having my ego popped. And it just became this like a death of 1,000 cuts. And it was just too much for me to emotionally cope with. And I guess I had a nervous breakdown, and that's where it, which, I mean, I can laugh about it now, but, it was, I bought a farm in the country, lived in the woods, like as you do, and grew a beard, as you do, started making my own wine, as you do, and then I built a pretend pub in a barn, and with a stage and a microphone on it, and I used to stand behind the bar, polishing the bar, looking at the stage. Going slowly mad. Yeah.
Can I say something though to you from a different perspective? Because I was just saying that at that time I actually watched you support Julian Cope. Love Julian Cope. And I want to say from my point of view as a youngster at that time, which I wouldn't have been that much younger than you, but I felt like so excited because there was somebody out there who was a poet that was creating poetry that sounded so brilliant, and it gave me hope. I was like really hopeful of because I love poetry, but I always felt it was kind of for those closed off groups, and you had to be academic and you had to go to university and you had to know all the right words. But then suddenly there's someone like Murray that's out there, and I was just like, we're breaking it. I felt like we were breaking through, a bit like Britpop felt a bit like we're breaking through.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting. So from that point of view, and then obviously I had no understanding of everything else that was going on. I just saw this incredible figurehead. Hey, it's going to be all right for me to turn around and say, I write poems actually, and I quite like to perform them, and is that all right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was completely broken at that point when I was standing on that stage. I remember I was doing a gig with Julian in Huddersfield. I mean, Julian Cope was a deeply healing presence to be next to as well. So that was, he kind of came into my life at the right time, and I'm very, very grateful for him being so kind to me on the road. And people like Roger McGough showed up, and he was really kind. John Cooper Clarke was really kind. Jock Scott, and my dear friend Selena Godden as well, who I'd known since way before any of that had started. There were lots of very, very kind people around, but I was absolutely shot. And I was standing on stage, I think it was in Huddersfield, or was it Wolverhampton? I can't remember. Touring Julian Cope, and somebody shouted from the audience, "What are you?" And I thought, I don't know. I really don't know what I am.
Wow.
And, I got called up by Mark Rylance at Shakespeare's Globe. And he said, would you come and do an opening poem for The Golden Ass? And I remember going out there and standing on stage in front of the audience. The audience started booing. My vibe was so heavy. And I got through it all. And then I got a part in a movie in France with Gerard Depardieu and Uma Thurman. And I went out there playing the brother of Louis XIV in this costume drama. And I was with Timothy Spall, Richard Griffiths, and Hal Bennett, Julian Glover, Julian Sands, God rest his soul. And it was amazing ensemble cast of really lovely actors who were just, and they knew it. They'd all been through it. They'd all had their moment, and they all understood. Even Hal Bennett, big in the 1960s. He was a lovely man, and so I had that, but still I was just so completely broken, and I just couldn't do anything about it. I was just happy to get off stage.
So I didn't hear your work in the 90s. I only heard about your work when we got to tour together. It was my first time I got to go on a tour. It was a big deal for me and Mixie. We were doing a double act. I was teaching then, so I had to apply for time off to go out and do it and everything. And Murray was kind of the headliner of the event, and we were supporting, and we were so excited. But that must have been, for us, it was like a big step up, and it was super exciting because it was, but for you it must have been a bit different, because I think that must have been after you'd had a breather, right, from all this.
Well, kind of. I couldn't speak or write or anything for about 2 years. And Matthew Lindley, who's now become a great friend of mine and a producer of my plays and stuff like that, he contacted me, and he's just such a sweet person. He's got such an easygoing presence to him as well. And he said, would you like to do it? And I thought, I've got to do something. And so I'll do this. You could look at it as a huge step down, but I didn't see that. I just felt I was interested in the idea of doing stuff with other people, because the ensemble experience of making the film in France, I'd felt like at least there's somebody there that there's a common currency of understanding and conversation with.
We just thought it was mad that you could get on the radio. I remember like promoting it and talking about it. The idea that like, oh, Murray's just going to have a chat with the BBC and do a record. We were like, what? It was. We were just like, it was.
Didn't you tour
amazing.
some really interesting venues, like kind of non-arty venues?
We did. We stayed at a super haunted hotel as well.
That was hilarious.
That was so haunted.
What was it? That iron door bent off its hinges, which you walk through to find two chairs, one on its side with the television,
with static,
an old-fashioned television with white noise playing on the screen.
Yeah.
I mean, what was all that about?
What was that about? There's a whole top floor. We snuck upstairs and we were like, the whole place was terrifyingly scary. And
it was
I've
The
never
Shining.
been so.
It was The Shining.
It was genuinely terrifying. And we were walking around going, this is. I don't know why anyone would leave
It didn't make any
this.
sense.
No, none of it. Why would you leave these rooms in this state with the most creepy.
Unchanged from the 1950s.
Yeah. I'd love to go back there.
Because the hotel wouldn't let them.
Yeah. What did you get from this experience, or what, like, where? It sounds like a really painful
Mentally ill.
But how did you get the sense of fun back? You kind of moved into writing for children, right, as well? You kind of made this...
Yeah, that was something I could, I got hold of and became, genuinely really, really good at. Then I got the Radio 4 gig where I had to learn to write again because I couldn't write. So I had to learn, and I spoke to people. I spoke to someone in particular, and we discovered, what is it? I had to learn what I did, which was really interesting. And what it is, it's the employment of novelty. And the employment of novelty is taking two ideas, like all the best ideas in the world ever, all employ novelty. And novelty is taking two ideas that don't go together and pushing them together, which create some sort of form of dramatic irony or oppositional Beauty and the Beast, etc. All scientific discoveries, or the majority of them. And so I worked with this friend of mine, Michael, and he was like, let's just deconstruct how you write so you can actually start to write the way that Murray writes as a technical exercise, rather than sitting there with the back of your hand on your forehead saying, where has the muse gone? It will never come back to me. You have to become a professional writer. So to become a professional writer, you need to understand what writing is. So let's do this. And so I basically had to learn to write from being a conduit of universal energy, which I felt like I was, where I just had to hold the pen and the poem wrote itself. I had to go back to the drawing board and start again. And then with performance, I had to do the same thing. That I'd become so emotionally dysregulated. I had to learn breathing techniques and meditation and all sorts of things, of physical warm-ups, all of the stuff, to become a professional performer, or before I stride out onto stage and do it. I mean, I trained a lot, as a performer, but all of it was gone. So I had to start again from the beginning and learn how to write and learn how to stand on stage and be on stage again, which was a deeply humbling experience. And I think the thing you say, what did you learn? I learned that. I learned how to do me, which is what anybody's doing anyway. So to do me without a story attached to it, which was really important. But I think it was a long, long, savage journey in the idea of self-identification, of believing I was something, So what was it that was hurt? What was it that collapsed? What was it that couldn't go out anymore? What was it that felt deeply ashamed of everything that had happened? Who was that? What is that thing? And of course, after enough self-inquiry, you find out that it was a group of constructs held together, masquerading as a personality. That was the only thing that got hurt, was a bunch of ideas. And so to let go of those ideas and just be the essential version of yourself, indulging in something that you love, trying to share that with an audience for the right reason, taking it down to its simplest form, to help people think better, to help other people out of the hole that I was in, and, I'm not saying I'm completely out of it, but just that realised, coming after a long, hard road of masses of mental chatter and lots of shame and lots of stories, to come out of that and then go, oh, wow, it's just a bit simpler than I made it out to be.
That's really, wow,
made
yeah.
me so emotional.
Yeah. Murray, thank you so much I've always wondered what it must have been like, because I had some viral hits with the rap battling and stuff, and I always felt they were very noisy, and I had no one to talk to, and I would go out and I'd be walking the dog, and I'd come back and 70,000 people had seen this thing. And because when you had rap battles particularly, you can't control the narrative, so everyone thinks you're at odds with certain people because it's a battle context. And you're going, well, no, I really care about this, and we're kind of friends now, and everything. You have no control over the story. And even when that rap battling went viral, my ex-head teacher spoke to me because Channel 4 wanted to do a story about it, and I need somewhere to film, and they said, could we go back to your old school? And I was like, yeah, okay. I phoned my head. He was lovely, but he said, you should know, like the Sun newspaper and other newspapers have been trying to interview kids at the school, because what you said about the story was teacher in rap battle gets all these views, then teacher gets disciplined or sacked. That's what they wanted the next day.
Yeah, it's got to grow legs.
Yeah,
it's got to go somewhere.
So that's what they were trying to push as they're going through it. And I've met other people. Gary Turk I bumped into at Edinburgh once, and he had that Look Up poem that went spectacularly viral on the internet. And he was kind of like, but a lot of poets would kind of a bit sneery about it and stuff. And he said it was the first poem he ever wrote, and he made it and he put it on the internet, and suddenly popped up, and he had no community around him. He didn't know what he was doing. And he came to see my show at Edinburgh, and it was about like 12 people or so on this gig. And I was like, you Gary Turk? And he just... he was scared to even meet me because I was a poet in the community.
You might hit him.
Yeah, because he thought that all poets hated him.
Well, I mean, there it is. And you think about that, and you think about how many young people involved in the industries of desire who are suddenly projected onto this screen with the Marxist reserve army of labour standing out the side thinking, I wish I was that guy. I wish I was that girl. I wish I was that person.
Yeah.
And everyone's thinking, and they see them get into a limo. They don't realise that person's going to be charged for that limo if they make any money. They don't realise that they're surrounded by people who are pretending to be their friends who aren't their friends. They don't realise that they're getting abuse on the street. They don't realise that their parents don't understand what's happening to them. And that's why you end up with dead people in show business and in the literary world and whatever, because the projection, dealing with that projection, unless you're absolutely clear about who you are and why you're doing it.
Because I remember around the time that you were getting quite famous, Mark, and I remember there was a Daily Mail thing about you, and there were some comments underneath, and they weren't very nice, and I think I messaged you and was like, I was so upset, I was so angry, and I really wanted to go for it on these people, and you were like, no, don't, just ignore it. And I'm just wondering, because when you were getting quite famous, I was like, well, he's not going to want to be mates with me, because I'm just me. I write a poem once a year, and I'm just me. And, and we've kind of held on to our friendship. And I'm just wondering, because I knew you beforehand, and all the way through it, you've been you. Whatever's happened, you've been you. And I'm just wondering, did you have people like that in your life that were just like, they just knew you? Did you have anyone like that?
It didn't feel like it at the time, I must admit. But, how much of that was me, I don't know. And the thing is, because if you think about it, you're not a rock band where there's 5 of you. You're not a solo artist who's got a system behind them where they've done it a million times. It's another person just suddenly projected into this space. Then I suddenly was just like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I am nothing more than a piece of coal being chucked on a furnace. Because this thing is a furnace, not really owned by anybody in particular, and its job is to keep on burning, and you're just a chunk of coal. And so that realisation was the shattering moment for me. It was the ego-shattering moment that I realised that none of this was about me.
let's have a poem to take us down from any sort.
Yeah, good.
This is we've had a piece sent in.
Please, take us down.
We've had a great piece sent in about something that, if you've been to a festival, I think you will be able to connect with this. Now, Murray, you've got a great poem from the perspective of a Portaloo.
Yeah.
At a festival, we've had a poet sent in a piece about something that was witnessed in a Portaloo.
Ooh. No one human being is worth more than any other human being, and this is always a great way of illustrating it.
So this is called Portaloo Number 3. It is by Abby Jinks. I'll give you all the links to her work at the end, but it's a fab piece. Here is Portaloo Number 3.
It's the talk of the town at the festival today. A new legend is being made while we dance and we play. It's a new feat of nature, a mystery to behold. Whose lower intestine could be so bold? There's a colossal appearance of something scarily true. It's a massive and curly, giant-girthed mighty poo. It was left in the campsite, Portaloo Number 3, and my goodness, it astounded anyone brave enough to see. You see, it was epically proportioned, truly eyes-wateringly large, and no one would touch it with the pole of a barge. Except my 8-year-old son, who is inquisitive to the core, and he kept wanting to get closer to see it even more. At one point, he snuck back, armed with a strong bit of grass, to poke the thing so incredible that came from an arse. Well, it really is quite unusual to see another guy's poo on display so perfectly in a Portaloo. You see, it never even made it into the hole. It just laid there on the seat, proud and whole, like an exhibit at the Museum of the Strange and Bizarre, and we were desperate to find out who'd done it. I mean, ooh la la. The discussions went viral. In an old school way, of course, with many of us there on the ground, becoming Inspector Morse. But I don't think we'll ever find out whose jobby it was. And maybe that's okay, actually, you know, because if we did ever meet them, they'd be flying so high, and we might feel incredibly shy to approach someone who in this earthly realm could produce something that would cause most bottoms to be in overwhelm. I'm in awe of the person from whom it came from. They'll be as light as a feather after dropping that bomb. They must feel so proud intestinally after letting go of that turd. They'll be skipping so free. And yes, I know, all those wonderful things about festivals matter. But the highlight for me was the poo that couldn't be fatter. Because in real life, those moments are actually quite rare. When we can come together to laugh and to share. And it's for that I am grateful to whoever it be that left the poo on the seat of Portaloo Number 3.
Thank you so much for that piece. If you would like to hear more of Abby's work, you can head to abbyjinks.com or her Instagram. We'll put links to both in the description to this episode. Did you enjoy that?
I did. Yeah, I mean, I always say in my Portaloo poem, I would say that, you know, there are support groups for people who have witnessed things that should not be witnessed and cannot be unwitnessed. You know, these things exist. What Abby beautifully puts across is the width of it. The width. You look at it and you think, that's impossible. That must have been a rhinoceros, possibly. An elephant, maybe. Possibly a large lion, but not a human. She had a very light tone of vibration.
Yeah.
Very nice thing was her delivery and the way that she was looking at it as well. And there was no big like, well, it was about a poo. There we go. That's all we need to know.
I like when her son came into it as well, and I was like, oh, we're raising the stakes now. Thank you so much for sending that in, Abby. We really enjoyed listening to it. I think what was funny for me as well is in that poem, people, she said, like, we'd be embarrassed to see the person, you know, that it was such a great achievement. If we met them, they'd be, you know, and I think that's kind of a bit ties in with what we do with the poetry sometimes. I think when poets see other people perform a piece, it's how we react to something they've produced and whether we think it's going to change our interaction with them or something. And from chatting with you today, Murray, I think that's something that anyone listening to this podcast we could reflect on is maybe sometimes when someone has a big success or something goes really well for them, it's a good time to be kind to them or to check
really?
out.
Do you know what I mean? 100%. And just be normal with them. Just be you. Like, just chill out. Like, stop. it being about you, like be about your friendship or be about the person and your interaction, not about everything else.
Yeah. I mean, I think I remember being in it was Belfast some years ago. I got invited over to do some thing at the Titanic exhibition. There was a load of Irish artists. And I saw Andy Irvine there, who's like a famous Irish folk singer. And, you know, the amount of stuff that people do to famous people, if you ever meet someone famous and you really like them, all you have to do is say thank you. That's all. And I just said to him, thank you so much for your work, because I really had to think about it. What is the right thing to say here? And I just said thank you. And he was really nice about it.
Murray, what's next then? What are you working on at the moment?
Well, a couple of things going on. I suppose I've got a Christmassy sort of play for kids, which I'm doing at the moment, which is based around sort of taboo breaking and, all of that sort of stuff. Just, watching all these little children being indoctrinated into the system and then just trying to plant a few seeds of anarchy in there, which is, but in a not in a destructive way, just reminding them that, the way that they're looking at the world at the moment, they're not wrong,
Have you got a name for the show?
It's called The 12 Yarns of Christmas, and it's going to be out in the sort of Essex area, maybe straying into Suffolk, going to Liverpool and various other places. And it's essentially for communities where kids, through income issues, probably aren't going to get to the theatre. So we're putting that on in school halls, gyms, maybe libraries as well. Trying to, give a bit of theatre straight in, no fee, all of that sort of stuff. So that's a really nice thing to do schools cool. Outreach work. I know you do a lot of that, Mark. So
yeah.
And
that's tricky. Schools have budgets of tight.
They've got no money.
They've got no money at the moment. Yeah.
So, and then on a slightly more glamorous level, I've got a movie which is slated to turn over/shoot in the spring, which is...
and you wrote this?
Yeah, been writing it for about 7 years, as is usually the case with a screenplay. And that's being directed by Irina Brooke, who's a theatre director. It's her first movie, and produced by Johnny Depp. There you go.
Wow.
And his company, which is In2, which is, and the producer's Stephen Mallet there for him. And so it's a memoir about it's based on my grandmother becoming gay in her 70s. So the sort of movie was based, like, troubled teen visits gay granny, and it's set in Somerset, and the movie's called Somerset. So and that's been a labour of love and a journey into working the collaborative arts, rather than being a poet writing on his own and saying to people, I don't care whether you like it or not, that's what I've written. If you're writing movies, everybody's into it, everybody's telling you stuff, and you have to grow a new skill set to actually be able to handle that. And that's just part of the business. So complaining about it is pointless. So you just got to do it, and you've got to learn to play that game and play it as well as you possibly can, and keep it open-hearted and light and breezy. Really, you just have to be breezy as a screenwriter and not get caught up, because it's a director's art. You're not the lead creative. So that's been fascinating to learn to be a collaborator.
And if people want to get hold of your work at the moment, what would you recommend they get hold of if they want to read more of your poetry? Because I've got I've got it in my hands right now, How Freaking Zeitgeist Are You, which I think is like the definitive collection for me of your work. Like, it's great. Can they get hold of copies of this online?
Yeah, I think you can still get it from Amazon or Unbound Book. I think Unbound Books has just gone into administration, actually. But no, I think you can get it on Amazon. And there's also The Mystery of the Radlesham Mumps, which is on Scotland Street Press, which is a 6,000 single-word poem with beautiful illustrations by Julie Verhoeven. There's The Virus Diaries, which is my collaboration with Orbital on Spotify and all of those. So that's Hartnell and Young, which was 14 poems, spoken songs for the first 14 weeks of the first lockdown, exploring the zeitgeist of that, which is a really fun album. And then the next poetry collection is kind of slowly building, but not ready yet.
I really highly recommend How Freaking Zeitgeist to you. I think there's so many great poems in there. And if you write for performance, there's I think repetition is used really effective at different points as well. There's lots of really, really great tips, I think, and ideas for poems in this. So if you want to write as well, this, I think, is a super, super useful book to get. Thank you so much, Murray, for coming in and joining us.
My great pleasure, and thank you so much.
It's been incredible to meet you again.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much, Keely, for coming along and joining me as host. Did you enjoy this episode?
I've had every type of emotion and I've loved it all. Thank you so much. It's been great.
It's been great. Thank you so much to Chris in the booth. Look, there we go. His big thumbs up, big smile as well. And thank you, everybody, for listening and joining us. This episode of the series, like all the episodes of the series, was made with public funding from Arts Council England. We're very grateful for that. Otherwise, head off and go and write some poems and have some fun. See you later on.
Do it!
Bye-bye.